Hey guys, what is up? What is up? Welcome back or welcome to Criminally Focused. My name is Desiree and yeah, it's been a while. Since I last made a video, I have done a lot of things. My daughter graduated high school. Woo woo. And we moved. So obviously we're in a new recording setup. I don't really have everything completely set up yet, so bear with me. It's just going to be kind of like me and you hanging out like we're friends, talking about the trial of Maxwell Anderson. And if you've been following me for a while, then you probably know that I have been covering Sade Robinson's murder almost since it happened. My cousin called me and she's like, "Did you hear that there's a possible serial killer in Milwaukee?" It didn't end up being a serial killer case. Instead, it ended up being a story of a 19-year-old girl who was brutally murdered and taken just far too soon from this world. A beautiful girl who was very much loved by her community. Okay, before we jump into it though, viewer discretion is advised. Obviously the things we're going to be talking about won't be easy to hear. And as much as it pains me to say it, anyone we talk about in this video is innocent until proven guilty. Please always do your own research to form your own opinions.
New today, 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson goes from a person of interest to the man charged with the death of 19-year-old Sade Robinson. It's a gruesome case that started 10 days ago with the discovery of a human leg in Mortimer Park.
In the interest of Maxwell Stephen Anderson.
A big admission today by prosecutors handling the homicide of Sade Robinson. A new court document shows blood found in the suspect's home does not match with the victim.
State of Wisconsin versus Maxwell Anderson.
If you haven't heard about Sade's murder, then briefly, let me tell you about who Sade was and what happened to her. 19-year-old Sade Carlina Robinson was absolutely beautiful. She was born in Mississippi on May 10th, 2004, and moved to Milwaukee when she was 2 years old. From there, she kind of split her time. Her mom lived in Milwaukee and her dad lived in Florida, so she kind of jumped back and forth. After completing high school, which I think she completed early, Sade decided to enroll in the Milwaukee Technical College, and she wanted to get her associate's degree in criminal justice. And while she was in school, she worked multiple jobs, including working at the Pizza Shuttle. And the Pizza Shuttle is just like a delicious pizza place. If you're ever in Milwaukee, I definitely think you should check it out. I went there when I was visiting family, like I said, and the food was awesome. The service was great. Everyone there was super friendly. So 2 thumbs up. But anyway, she worked at the Pizza Shuttle as a cashier, and she was loved by her coworkers and by customers. So on April 1st, 2024, Sade spoke with her mom in the morning and then went to work. While she was there, she told some people that she was excited about, going on a first date with somebody that, if I'm correct, I believe Sade was introduced to Maxwell through like a friend of a friend. So she went to work and then went home, told people at, her office building, like the office manager, that she was also excited about the date. That night, Sade and Maxwell went to a couple restaurants, got some drinks, and they can be seen on surveillance in those restaurants doing that. Sade also took a Snapchat of like what was considered like a drinking game where Maxwell Anderson's arm can be seen in it. After going out to, get some drinks and eat at these restaurants, Sade and Maxwell decided to go back to his house. And that's literally the last time she was ever seen alive. After the date on April 1st, the timeline kind of speeds up. We've got a lot of things happening all at once. So I'm going to try to break it down as briefly as possible. And then when we go over the trial, we'll get into more details. I'll show some surveillance footage and In the description box below, there'll be like full trial days linked. I've been watching it on Fox 6 in Milwaukee, and I've really liked their coverage so far. So I'll leave all those links below if you want to check them out. After the date, as April 1st went into April 2nd, Sade's car can be seen on surveillance camera driving all around Milwaukee. And it can also be linked with her cell phone that happened to be in the car. On the early morning of April 2nd, around 7:30, the Milwaukee Fire Department responded to a call about a vehicle fire. Once they arrived on scene, they would find out that the car had been intentionally set on fire and it belonged to Sade. It was a 2020 Honda Civic. It was completely destroyed inside. I guess I shouldn't say completely, because whoever set her car on fire, I don't know if they didn't know what they were doing, but a lot of evidence was left in the trunk, and the trunk was in the best condition, which was great because it preserved a lot of that evidence. Later on April 2nd, 2024, around 5:30, the police department received a call saying that two kids, while they were walking along Lake Michigan in Ornament Park, discovered a severed human leg. This leg would later be identified as belonging to Sade. And then later, on April 2nd, around 9 o'clock, Sade's manager reported her missing. We found out more details in the trial, but Sade's manager was really concerned that she hadn't shown up for work and she hadn't responded to any of her texts, so she went into the police department to report her missing. Well, they had to perform a wellness check on her apartment before they were able to actually list her as a missing person. So on April 3rd, 2024, a wellness check was performed on Sade's apartment. While they were there, they didn't find Sade, obviously, and they didn't find anything that looked, like the apartment had been ransacked or any type of crime had been committed inside her apartment. It just looked like a college kid's apartment. Unfortunately, while they were there, they also found a pink safe. When opened, they found marijuana in there, cash, and pills. And the officers tested the pills on the spot, just a presumptive testing. I don't know how they did it, if it was with a strip or whatever, however they do it. But when they did it, it tested positive for meth. Unfortunately, it was never tested in the crime lab. So we don't actually know if it was methamphetamines that were inside those pills. On April 3rd, the police also ended up talking to one of Sade's best friends, and she did great when she testified. She was concerned because Sade hadn't responded to her, but she had her on Life 360. Her friend was able to give that information over to the police, and they were able to then kind of track Sade's whereabouts and where her last location was. On April 4th, 2024, Maxwell Anderson was arrested at a routine traffic stop. Charges, however, weren't pressed until April 12th. In the meantime, more body parts began to be discovered throughout Milwaukee that were identified as belonging to Sade. On April 4th, they performed a search of Maxwell Anderson's house, and from what they reported at the time, they found a blood-stained mattress, blood in the stairwell of his home, on the walls, and a sex dungeon in the basement. So far, I haven't heard anything about this sex dungeon, and the blood, as you may know, was tested, and it wasn't a match to Sade. They also found several gasoline containers in the basement, which, could be connected to the fire. On April 5th, more human remains were discovered in a park in Milwaukee. And then from there, I believe more body parts are continuously found on April 6th. There's so much notes that I have, so many dates to remember, and I'm the worst with that. But in the end, multiple body parts were found of Sade's, and a lot of these discoveries were made by her family. I just can't imagine. So that's basically the timeline. And now let's talk about the trial. So far, this has been an incredibly emotional trial to listen to. I know a lot of my viewers are moms, and I know we don't want to go there, but Sade's mom is sitting there. Her mom and her dad and her family, friends are sitting there in trial, witnessing photos of severed human body parts, like severed legs and hip bones. During trial, they show her blanket. And I know this has been really difficult for Sade's family, and I really want to send them so much love. If we could take a moment to leave them a nice comment, maybe they'll see it. And you never know. Maybe it'll help. So the trial for Maxwell Anderson began on May 27, 2025. And remember, he's facing count 1, first-degree intentional homicide, count 2, mutilating a corpse, count 3, arson of a property other than a building for Sade's car, and count 4, hiding a corpse. The lead prosecutor on the case is Ian Van Curzan, and he's actually the assistant DA. The state is prepared to show scientific evidence like a timeline with GPS data, photos, video surveillance, and phone pings that correspond with the video surveillance. They have about 250 witnesses, and the prosecution should take about a week to a week and a half. Now, jumping to the defense, Anthony Cotton is the lead defense attorney on that side, and you might recognize his name from popular cases like Morgan Geyser, who had been convicted in the Slender Man killings. The defense will probably try to poke holes in the investigation and show that, Maxwell Anderson was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The jurors aren't sequestered during this process, and they'll be allowed to take notes. The prosecution, in my opinion, started out pretty strong, and they went over the timeline and what items they used to gather Sade's location on the night of the murder. And this information is important because it corresponds with the street camera footage, surveillance, and the bus surveillance, which we'll go over shortly. The timeline that the prosecution lays out, they start out by discussing when Osiris Terrell found Sade's leg. They go through the Life 360 phone records of Verizon and shows that Maxwell and Sade remained at his house for about 3 hours. From there, Sade's phone moves away from Anderson's house along with her car around 12:45. It travels throughout Milwaukee between 12:45 and approximately 4:40 when the phone shuts off. Around 4:40 a.m., evidence shows that Sade's 2020 Honda Civic was in the area of Warnemont Park where her leg was found. And if you check out this video that they showed in court, it just gives me the creeps.
What are we looking at here, Detective?
So this is the video that I recovered from the pump house. I noticed headlights along the bluff and a shadow of a person in the tree line.
All right, a human silhouette, more or less?
Yes. I can already see right in the left area, towards the middle. And now walking in between these two trees. And right here again, in between the other two trees.
Does it appear he bends over right there?
Yes, sir. And now the individual, the silhouette, is standing behind the tree and is going to walk back towards the tree line and will no longer be visible.
Around 6:50 in the morning, you can see Anderson's car pulling into the playground area where another leg would be left. And then you see him walking away from the fire where, I believe I mentioned it earlier, there were two women that witnessed him not setting the car on fire, but witnessed him leaving the area of the car fire. And on the surveillance, you can literally hear them saying, he did this, he did this. Now, defense tried to argue and say that you couldn't hear he, but I think it was pretty easily understood. And one of the most important pieces of evidence, like surveillance, that I think they found was the surveillance video of Anderson when he was on the bus, taking the bus from the scene of the car fire and back to his house. On this video, you can see a dark gray hooded top, large tan backpack. When the defense got up to do their opening statements, they argued that, first of all, they call Maxwell Max, and I hate that. I don't know why, but it just bugs me. So the defense said basically that the state is trying to use emotions to sway the jurors and that the jurors have to consider reasonable doubt. All of the work that would have taken to make sure the crime scene was clean, make sure no evidence was left. They just said it would be hard because, quote unquote, there would be like a mountain of DNA evidence. And how did he clean that all up? They also note that the house that Anderson lives in is a duplex, and the neighbor reported hearing nothing. The tenant that lived in the lower part of this duplex reported that he didn't hear anything out of the ordinary that night. And the defense argues that if Sade was killed there, that would be impossible. But overall, when I look at everything that was presented this week in trial, I am hoping that being able to see Anderson's outfit, being able to see the GPS data, that the prosecution is able to put those dots together and be able to explain to the jury kind of what happened and allow them to be like, well, obviously Maxwell Anderson, he was wearing that, he was getting on the bus, he was seen, or somebody was seen in a backpack on the surveillance at Warnemont Park. You know, could he have drugged Sade, assaulted her, and taken her to Warnemont Park to dispose of her and to cut her up? If Maxwell Anderson would have taken Sade's body in her car to, like in the back seat, to Warnemont Park, removed her and dismembered her there, like right along the lake of Lake Michigan, right there, and allowed a lot of that blood to wash into Lake Michigan, and therefore leaving less of, any DNA, any trace, because it would have been in the water, and then possibly wrapped the body parts up and put them in the backpack, wrapped them up so good that it wouldn't, nothing would leak out. Sorry, I'm trying to be as less graphic as possible, but this is just a horrible case. But that's what I'm thinking. That's what I think happened, is that he clearly didn't commit the crime in the house because there would be blood, correct? Like there would be DNA evidence, a mountain of DNA evidence. So it had to have been done elsewhere. So the prosecution is going to have to show the jury members when in the timeline he could have committed this, because that's going to be a huge question in their mind. If they can answer that question, then I think they should have enough evidence to prove that he's guilty of murder and arson and hiding a corpse. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to go over with you. I think we're good right now. I think I've been rambling, unedited, freestyling this for long enough. I hope you guys are still here and enjoyed this video. I will do another recap at some point. I don't know if it'll be next week or if it'll be later on, but we will talk again soon. But until then, I will be in the chats of the live stream. I usually, like I said, watch it on the Fox. Is it Fox 6? I feel like calling it Fox 9, but Fox Milwaukee. I'm in the little chat typing away. I'm also working at my full-time job, but I'm in there. I'm watching every day, taking notes, and I will be back very shortly to give you my opinion of how the trial's going. Until then, like I said, I'm sending so much love to Sade's family, her friends, and just the city of Milwaukee. Stay safe, guys. Make smart choices. And stay focused. I'll see you soon. Bye.